With the current fiscal year budget
Current fiscal
revenue,
year,
how are we doing?
revenue?
Budget and revenue.
Okay, the revenue, we have everything's on target. As you know, some of these are cyclical in terms
Yes.
of licensing.
Yeah, we don't-
January 1, there's a round of licensing,
Yep.
so until after that, it's going to be, I can't say exactly, but that tends to, as you know, that's one of the smaller items in our revenue stream. The only, as you know, major revenue sources that are really a matter for discussion, really, motor vehicle excise is the only big one that has an impact. So, what's the timetable on that? Didn't know yet.
First big bill doesn't go out until the first of the year.
So 30 days due. So in terms of, it's really hard to, it's too early for us to know if there's
Too
any
much,
issues
right.
or, with regard to the status of revenue at the moment.
But what we do know is on track.
No reason to think otherwise in terms of the other items that we have. As you know, some of them, like I mentioned, are cyclical. Some of them, a lot of these licensing and permits come up beginning in January.
And budget, spending,
We don't have anything out of whack, but go ahead, Madam Town Council.
Everything's pretty much on target, and again, there's some things that they wait till later in the year
Yep.
to make sure that they have the money for to spend if they need it, but everything looks pretty much on target.
Some, if you were to look at it, some of the upfront costs, like salt and sand, those two, really the first of the year, those are, I'm sorry, usually the beginning of the fiscal year before the winter hits, there's a lot of money put into that. So in terms of tracking it, you couldn't just look at it on a percentage basis this time of year. But we do have a couple issues to bring up. I don't know if you want to bring them up now, if you don't mind, because it is, to the extent that we have some
It's current
potential
year.
issues shaping up for the fiscal year, the current fiscal year. Why don't you,
So we're possibly looking at trying to get a reserve fund transfer to be considered. We had a HVAC upgrade done here at the library, here at the town hall and at the library. And when they did the upgrade, there were some things that were determined to be outside the scope of the work for the HVAC contract, which was currently completed through a grant. So there's an additional about almost $16,000 between the two buildings of valves that need to be changed out and some things on the compressor. And without those things being changed out, the system will not be working properly. And the efficiency that we got the grant for, it won't be there.
and we won't know if the funds
Systems.
the funds that were expended on the upgrades under the grant are even going to be working properly without the supplemental contracts. And just for a little bit of background, the money that is being spent on the HVAC system was money that was obtained through for the Green Communities Act. That was $164,000. And some of you may recall that I think the town meeting before that, we had actually requested and got money appropriated from town meeting for a similar, for the same thing, for upgrading these two buildings. And fortunately, we didn't have to spend that because we were successful in getting the grant. But as Sue points out, they were substantially into this project when they brought it to our attention that there were other systemic issues beyond what we had contracted them to do. And as some of you might know, I'm not the least bit qualified to know that, and I think, no offense to you, Sue, but unless we have the technicians tell us this. So it would have been helpful had we known a bit earlier, but in the end, it is what it is. And between the two buildings, we have two contracts in place, one for $12,000 and one for approximately $3,000. And again, until those projects are completed, those supplemental contracts fulfilled, we won't know for sure that the major investment is working the way that we had hoped. So as it stands, we are holding back 10% on the major project because we're going to have the same company that did the big project, the major replacement, do the supplemental pieces. And we may have been able to go out and get it better pricing, but it was recommended to us that you really want one company to own the whole thing. So no one's pointing fingers at each other when something doesn't work. So for us to be holding back some funds makes sense because in the end, we're just paying one company to do everything.
So the 164,000 that we voted on at town meeting, we just didn't go out to, we didn't,
164,000 was a grant that was not voted at the town meeting. We voted 40,000, but subsequently we got the grant, so we didn't do the minor upgrades. We did the green communities upgrades, so it was more.
with that
energy
40,000?
efficient. No, that
No, with the
40,000 ended
grant.
up going back into stabilization at town
Okay,
meeting.
that's
So we
that was
didn't
my
end up
question.
using it. We put it back into stabilization, not knowing that we had these additional funds.
Right, and so that's off the books, it's not
Correct, right,
anything,
right.
okay.
Do they warranty it?
Yes, there's I think it's,
Well, look at me, it's 10
I
years,
I
believe.
think it's a
10
10-year,
years,
I
yes,
want to
10
say
years,
it's a
yeah.
10-year warranty.
Yeah, that wouldn't warrant staying with one
Yeah.
person.
Well, and that's, we know, we had some difficulty, we'll say, in having the company we're working with complete some of the work. And so there was some hesitation as to whether or not we should be seeking, the same company to do some of the supplemental work. But some of the advice we received, even from our own, wiring inspector, was,
Keep the
it's-
warranty in one place.
Exactly, because if you have two companies, they're gonna just start pointing fingers at each other.
Makes
saying what
sense.
goes wrong. So, I mean, I don't want to badmouth, we're in pretty good shape. It's just part of the issue is, we were reluctant to lay out funds,
Sure.
so we do have a company that has done a lot of work and hasn't got paid. So we're actually just worked that out recently, that we're gonna hold back a retainer of about 10% on the major part of the project until such time that the supplemental contracts that really weren't part of the larger project, supplemental contracts that are in place are fulfilled, and we know that the system is working as designed. So that's something we recently agreed to. So hopefully in the next, the next 2 to 3 weeks, we believe the goal is that they have is to be done by the end of the calendar year. But back to the original point, we don't have $16,000
Laying around.
laying around, and, I mean, it's something we could, try to take out of building maintenance, but we'd just be back to see you later in the year. So again, something that you might have to look forward to.
So that wouldn't be, you wouldn't be looking for the reserve fund transfer at the end of this year, you'd be looking for it at the beginning of next year? Because I just want to say,
We don't know
We're
yet.
looking, if
So-
they finish the job within the next 4 weeks, they're gonna be looking to get paid within the next 4 weeks.
So either we deplete a budget,
right,
the building budget that isn't designed for this. So again, that's a conversation we can have when the time comes.
right.
This is really a matter of saying, be aware that this is coming, that's all.
And we have 25,000 in there? 30?
No, 50.
50.
50?
Yes.
We haven't,
We haven't
50 in
we
the
haven't
reserve
touched it.
fund?
Yes.
Okay.
And did we, for the HVAC, sorry, I don't mean to stick on, but for the HVAC, because sometimes we do that, again, I'm terrible with words, but they do like a, somebody help me with words.
Like
They
a-
do a little look around saying, hey, this is.
Inspection?
We pay people to do a thing to look at.
Out to bid?
No, we.
I feel like we're playing charades.
We pay somebody to look at the thing that we're doing.
Like a peer review type of thing?
Yeah, well, not even a peer review, but like. we
The
pay
building
for
inspector.
No, a,
Second
um,
opinion?
No, I know. No,
Don't help them, this is fun.
what are we doing, what are we doing with
The
the,
feasibility stuff.
Feasibility.
We're not done on that.
Oh.
No,
All right, so that's the only reason I asked is because they would have hopefully found those extra
no,
things.
they didn't find it until they came in and started
Gotcha.
making the.
That was all I was asking, because a lot of
I'm-
times I hear that we are paying for something to have a feasibility
study.
study or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
I'm guessing in this case, they found it when they started really
As they
taking
started.
stuff apart.
That's right, right. And in fairness to them,
So.
it wasn't part of the scope.
Yep.
It wasn't part of what was intended when we applied for the grant, so.
Thank you.
But once again, until we know that the system's working the way it should be working.
Just for sure.
The other situation that we're encountering, and some of you may be aware of it, but the emergency, the alarm system for this building, well,
There's kind of two separate things, but they kind of work together.
but we're right now, the so-called fobs,
Mhm.
familiar with fobs that don't work?
Yes?
That is a problem that seemingly can't be solved by the town. We have a company that has serviced these, from whom the town bought the system years ago, I don't know how many years ago. So the problem is that it can't be serviced adequately. There's a software issue that isn't being serviced. It's not something Wayne can fix.
Same
So-
company
That
that...
says a lot.
Are we dealing with the same company that installed?
Well, right now, yes, we are, but we're possibly looking at going with another company and a different system.
Yeah, we have some.
You know, like a keypad system, so you can walk in the building and use your keypad to get in and, you know.
So we have feelers out there. We're expecting to get some estimates, within a reasonable period of time. So we have no idea what that's going to cost, but the situation is kind of becoming untenable when people who need to get in the building, boards, committees, even, a lot of our employees for that
I can't
matter.
get in.
Reminds me of a phone issue we had.
Yeah, can't get
I
in
was
the
gonna,
building.
I was gonna say, is this a FY20 or an FY21 issue? But if people
Well,
can't get in the
right,
building,
Yeah,
what-
Yes.
And
so-
it's
20.
getting worse. It's not even like status quo. It's getting worse.
Like mine was literally working 2 weeks ago, and I tried it this week, and I can't get in the building. I'm having to see if somebody's here to let me in the building at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Well, if you came on time, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
Town hall opened late that day.
Good point.
But anyway,
Good point, yeah.
so,
I was
yeah,
there.
so we don't have that. We don't have security cameras even to look over the parking lot. So if somebody is trying to get in the building that can't get in the building, we don't have that ability
Those
to.
antiquated systems that shouldn't be huge money, but there are things that really need to be solved this current
This
fiscal
current
year.
Like, are there rules from going with like a ring or something like that?
I was just
which-
thinking the Nest.
Which are a little bit, well, not a little bit, a lot more sophisticated than a wired system, like that thing up there. You know what I mean? Like, so we have them in here, but we don't have them outside, these things?
Correct.
Well, I think
There's two of them. There's
one of them
four.
works sometimes.
Yeah.
This is a
And the other one
room
tends
that
not to
needs
work.
to be recorded
All
frequently.
right. I'm
Like this,
So-
this
What's
system is
going on
obviously
here?
on Cam's system. Our
Yeah.
system is on our, on the town.
Yeah.
So they're two different systems completely.
Mm.
All right.
So,
So,
Well, the new stuff is just different technology where you don't have to do all that stuff.
right.
Supposedly.
I'll trust your opinion. I don't know anything about this without some further input from, again, we do have at least, I'm waiting for at least one vendor to talk to me in the near future that one of the building officials reached out to. So it's coming, and it's coming sooner rather than later.
And what is your plan to, like building maintenance, to,
Again,
You don't know what you're looking at for a
without having
cost.
Really any idea what
Right.
costs are gonna be involved, whether it's 3,000 or 30,000. We just don't know, but it is getting worse to the extent that putting this off till next fiscal year isn't helpful.
Probably
Like
not
you said,
gonna.
it's not, boards and committees are great, but you're also paying people to work, and if they can't get in the building sometimes, and anyone like on weekends and stuff, for whatever reason, my father's.
well, it sounds like it could be a security issue too, I'm imagining if it's not working for people to get in, that at times it might
Well, there's
not keep
times
people
where-
out. I
Well,
mean,
there's times where the building's open and there's no meetings, because we don't have the ability to say the building's
Yeah.
closed for during these hours. There's no meetings on Monday and Tuesday night this week. So every night from 6 to 9:30?
Yeah, I mean, we have to actually call the alarm company to make sure the doors are locked. We should be able to lock the doors ourselves.
right.
It is a little tricky, because, as you know, boards and committees that are in here various nights of the week, you can't give everybody a key to the building. That's not a great system. I know that is how some towns operate, because again, there's no perfect system for security when you're dealing with volunteers. But the one we have now doesn't work. We'll put it that way. So trying to get some different input ideas as to what system we should be, gravitating towards and what the cost estimates would be. So again, it's coming. Don't have anything concrete at this point, but we wanted to bring it up now so if the time
We're
comes
aware.
in the next month or two when we say we need,
Yeah,
Definitely.
$40,000 on.
Definitely keep us
just throwing a
posted.
number out there.
Absolutely, yes.
And just for, I don't know if you want to make copies or for your, this is the contract for the HVAC with the dollar amounts on there. There's one separate for the library.
Those the supplemental? or the-
Yes, the supplemental.
Okay, yeah.
And since we're talking about
Yeah.
current year,
Sorry?
just the bill that you guys need to approve for.
Oh, the finance committee has to approve the bill for the.
Just take a look.
for the
Oh, okay. Pass it back.
nameplates. I don't know. I think we should be paying for them.
How much do they cost?
I don't know.
It's like,
It's like
You could take it from the, out of your salary.
$11.50
$11.50.
each.
This is a ministerial act.
There goes your power.
Not a major financial
the
issue.
checks are even cut, just need to approve payment of that.
How do I do that?
Just.
Just sign it.
Oh,
And if you do that, I will then approve it myself.
all right, I would entertain motions to approve the bill to pay for.
Motion to
two
approve
new
the
name
bill to
tags.
pay for the name
Name
tags
plates.
for new finance committee members.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving? All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Sign it and more people approve it.
Barbara.
6, a
I guess
6.
the real question would be, is what script? What script are they in? This one?
This is
I
the
know
same
they're
script.
different.
I got
This
lower
has got a
case.
good one. This
Yeah,
has
you
got
have the
good
different
one.
ones.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You
okay, I
can,
like
we
the
can
lower
discuss
case.
that after we leave if you like.
New name
In
tags.
fact, you'll probably be discussing it alone. if you
Sure, I will.
want. Okay. I'm sorry, Paul.
Free cash.
Okay, why don't you talk? about
So,
it?
free cash has not been certified yet, we're working on the tax rate setting, and free cash is probably about 75% there. We'll definitely have a number when it comes down to starting to talk about the possible capital plan and actual budget gap that you have in front of you.
Sorry, I missed that because I was looking at this, so, I'm sorry.
Free cash is not certified, 75% of the way there. We'll
All
know
right.
when we're looking at the cap, by the time we have to look at the capital plan.
Our reps this
Mhm.
year, and so our rep that left last year, we got a new rep, and now he got promoted, and now we have a third rep, so in the last 3 years, we've had.
Wow.
So they kind of have to get an understanding of how our process works, and, I mean, everybody is somewhat the same, but we all have our
Yeah,
meetings.
different
as
little
well.
circumstances for each town.
Continuity. I mean, the town had one
One
rep for
forever.
several years, so it made it quite a lot easier than.
Smoother,
Yeah.
Smoother.
more
Yeah,
efficient.
yeah, he already knows how I work, I
Yes,
know
yeah.
how he works. you
Yes.
know, so.
But in being government, it couldn't last forever,
Mm-hmm.
correct? So as far as next year's budget forecast so far, the only thing we have the summary page.
Yep.
The actual budget proposals are being compiled, and for those of you who are new, on or before January 1, I'm required to provide a budget document for next fiscal year. Hopefully, it'll be reasonably balanced, but one of the problems at that time of year is we still don't know what state aid's going to be. We don't know what our new growth calculation is going to be, so we have to make some assessments, and those tend to be conservative. So a projected deficit would tend to be with us, up until really through April, at least on paper. Hopefully it's just a paper deficit. It's hard to say at this point.
So for the sake of the new members, as the town manager is stating, when we get this initial draft version of the budget, there's always, at least in the years that I've been on, some sort of deficit. I think last year we were in the 2 million range at this time. Looking at this, we're, a little under 600,000 as a deficit, so.
And we'll tell you what the assumptions are.
So
when we-
that's, a better starting place than we were at this time last year, and usually we're a little higher than 600,000 at this time, so.
Can we go back to fiscal year '20? The numbers here are a projection through the end of the fiscal year, which is July, June?
End of June 30th.
End of June.
Right. Yes.
So are you really expecting to be
No.
4 million in the positive?
I'm sorry, where?
No, so what happens
So the
is,
total
if
expense
you
total.
notice down where it said estimated local receipts, it says actuals for FY19. We had estimated numbers in there, and once we get to the 2 years from now, we go back to the year where we had a full set of local receipts. So we plug in what we actually got instead of what we were anticipated. So some of that stuff came in higher, and same thing with our state revenue. We estimated at something, but by the time it gets final numbers at the State House, sometimes it's a lot more than what we estimated.
So the challenge is that we're planning for FY '21. We're currently in FY '20. So realistically, we don't know that the plan that we started with, how close it's going to be by the end of this fiscal year.
And then we
Closing the books on last fiscal year's actuals, but you're already into this fiscal year with estimates based upon 2 years before that actual. So you really have a situation, you're talking about, kind of 4 fiscal years that are all playing into what we have to deal with. And like you brought up, we're making estimates, starting to make estimates now for, the end of next June, 18 months out. So it's an art as well as a science. But yeah, the FY '20, what you see here, these are what was estimated by the town that we are applying the current year's budget to. And so the FY '21 estimates are kind of built off that. I'm sure all of you know how the tax rate works, for instance, and you look at, the FY '20 levy limit, and that's a set figure. And then, adding the 2.5%, for, the Prop 2.5 law, that's an easy number. The new growth isn't necessarily an easy number. Are people familiar with what new growth is in terms of?
I think it would be good to
Yeah.
explain.
Touch
I've
upon
had it
Go
explained,
ahead.
but.
Okay,
Go ahead, I'll let you give it a shot.
So basically, new growth is what we get an estimate of building permits, additional new houses, condos, a commercial building adding on new roof, so it's adding value to those properties. So you don't know how that's going until pretty much September of the year that you've already approved your budget for. So that's a moving target.
So usually during the process, we usually look at like a 5-year average and use that as a number for, at least for budget projection. But like Sue said, you don't actually know what the number is until you're a quarter way through the fiscal year. So what do we do? So
Not-
So we
not
just
quite-
set the tax- we
not
just
quite
set the
halfway.
tax rate,
Yeah.
where we're in process of setting the tax rate, and our new growth was 405, but we used 300 last year, so
Right.
$105,000 more than what we estimated.
And we can get like more in-depth information too as we go along, like the assessor's office will come in.
Okay.
And you can really get like the breakdown of that, exactly how they kind of, that's the number they give.
Yeah, but it's,
Assessor gives the new
it's
growth
value
number.
based upon things like building permits and stuff through a certain date. So,
Yeah.
Right.
so again, it's cut off and then it's calculated from there. So it's probably more complicated than it has to be, but this is government. So, but it makes sense when you get the bigger picture. But so we're doing, so much of what we do is just based on estimates. So you're putting together a budget, getting a budget appropriated when a huge part of your revenue is still speculative. But we've been doing a pretty good job. I think we've always finished with a healthy free cash number, which is part of that has to do with your expenditures, your revenue versus expenditures at the end of the year. So again, we've done pretty well. One of the we get into a situation, I know we've talked about this over the years, that, can we be a little less conservative with our revenue estimates and maybe use the funds to build our reserves instead of, but again, you start playing with fire over time when you're trying to justify a way to raise money. Because once you start raising money, you're gonna spend money. And that's neither good nor bad, but that's the reality of it. When you're talking about, as an example, do we put money in, do we save money, put it into savings, while you're laying off 3 teachers? I mean, people don't pay taxes for us to put it in the bank. On the other hand, you want to meet certain, financial, targets that it would help, from whether you're a bond rating agency or anybody else would say, okay, these are thresholds that, make you a very healthy financial community. Where's the balance? There isn't a right or wrong. It's a matter of what the policymakers think is important at the time.
Thank you.
So once again, we have absolutely no answers to any of your questions, but
Just
you're asking the right
It's
questions.
So,
Every
Not
budget
understanding-
I've ever done is.
Yeah.
not understanding new growth, do you understand the debt exclusion number that's on there for $3.68 million?
No.
Okay, so we have the high school and other debt that we've incurred, and so this money actually dollar for dollar pays for that debt because the taxpayers chose to increase their tax rate for a period of time to pay that debt. So there's a line item in the actual budget that you'll see as we go through the actual line item budgets that is 4-point-something million. A portion, so this 3.8 is a big portion of that. There's $690,000 that's paid for by the water department, and only $141,000 that actually comes off of
Within the
having to
budget.
raise and appropriate.
Right.
So that money's actually not actually paying for your everyday services. It's paying for the debt that has been incurred, that the town agreed, or the taxpayers agreed to add.
And that's
to their
another
taxes.
thing too, like when the tax collector comes in, they give us a big spreadsheet that will show you, like, we borrowed money for,
25 years for the school.
right, 25 years for the school. It'll show you what year we borrowed it in, it'll show you each year what's coming off of that debt.
Right.
It'll show you, there's certain things that have to be falling off soon, like windows that we paid for, that I'm sure are,
Police stations come off.
the police station is
Yep.
coming off, so that will come off of that, that number. So we're usually by then, we're purchasing something else because we need
Yeah.
a fire engine, or we need a fire station, or, but, well, that wouldn't,
Well, we have,
that was a
Depending on
different-
how that's
Yeah.
paid for.
right, depending on how they, what the tax collector, how they, or how the town accountant, how they decide to, whether it's or the town manager, whether it's a debt exclusion, or whether we pay for it within the,
So like the fire truck that we purchased, we did a 1-year debt exclusion. So in 1 year, you raised
Then it
your
was
taxes,
gone.
let's say $20 per thousand for 1 year, and it paid for that fire truck that 1 year, and then it came off.
And that-
but then we have a school that's 25 years on there.
Split
You
hairs,
know,
but
and different things fall off at different times, and there's things with, like, road improvements and that kind of stuff too, that, over the years, that come off after. It goes into more depth, and you'd be able to get a better idea of what it's really about.
just to touch on that, there's 3 types of overrides. Some of you are familiar with that. There's the general override, which you raise your taxes for eternity. And then there's a debt exclusion, like with the new school, so you're raising tax dollars 1-for-1 to pay for the debt over 25 years. And then there's a capital exclusion, which Sue referred to, which is a one-time, when we bought the tower truck, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, that was
It's
approximately $1 million approximately, so that was a one-time, we all went to the ballot box and decided for 1 year, you're gonna raise your taxes to pay for this, and then it's done. So that's a capital exclusion, as opposed to a debt exclusion.
All right, thank you.
And they decide on some of that stuff because of, like, the amount of money that it is, or Sonia will say, we get more bang for our buck doing it this way, or it's, you kind of just, right.
Yeah, so,
Do we have the ability, sorry, I don't mean to stick on this, do we have the ability to like refi that stuff if we say pay a 5% rate and then, I don't know,
Rates go down.
whatever's happening with rates now, they're going down a little bit. We can get 3.5.
Yes, the rates,
You can.
yeah.
That's good.
The only thing you can't do is borrow money and invest it
Yeah,
and make money on the investment. That's not legal for municipalities. It's called arbitrage. You can't do that, which would be nice if you could borrow money, use the power of, the taxpayers. There's no safer debt in the universe than, than municipal debt, because it's going to get paid. Taxes are going to get paid, it's going to get paid. So unfortunately, you can't, get an interest rate of 2% invested at 6%.
yeah.
Although I believe there are some
That should
parameters that may be changing.
I was gonna say that should change, because that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that,
I think if there are, if you accept certain provisions of the law, you can form an investment policy.
yeah.
But you're also playing with fire with taxpayers'
If you
money.
lose,
But the
yeah.
municipal stuff, you just pointed it out. I mean, if you're doing it with other stuff, but the municipal stuff is pretty good. I mean,
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, and again, you can't, it's not like a company might go belly up,
that's what I mean, like,
Yeah.
so it's,
Right. So, anyway, what you see here at the top, it's total expenses. That is the estimate of what, after departments submitting their budget to us, and that being compiled by Sue, that adds up to this number, total expenses.
Yep.
And again, the projected revenue so far, based upon estimates early on, is $56 million. Now, the problems become, that these estimates that create the total expenses of 56.4, as you see at the top, they're predicated on some estimates. Health insurance, which is a $6 million budget, we're estimating a 4% increase. That's, $250,000. If that's, we're talking about, a percentage point is $60,000, so 5, 6, 7%. We feel very good about that 4% number. In fact, we're hoping it's going to be less. About 3 years ago, we're in our third year of being self-insured, and we have performed extremely well. In fact, we've already not just saved about $800,000, $900,000 in premium, and have about the same amount in the bank, money that otherwise would have been going to the Mayflower Health Group side. So that's a bright spot. So we think 4% may be a little conservative. Retirement, which is the pension assessment, 6%, do you recall? So what we're Sonia's estimating 6% at this point. The school department, we're estimating a 3% increase. They are in the early stages of their own budget process. I think on January, the next meeting in January, I think it's the 7th, they'll be, the school superintendent and his staff will be presenting their first draft to the school committee. And that, obviously, it tends to be, quite substantial, which again, just like any budget process, you start somewhere. 3%, while it seems modest, there's always going to be, and as you learn, there's some legitimate reasons why 3% may be too modest, and that's when we come to these decisions about how much do you want to put in the bank.
Yeah.
So that will come across at some point. The regional VOTEC school, we have a current estimate of 2%. Now, keeping in mind, both
2% increase?
2% increase, yes. Keep in mind, you remember last year we had a significant
Decrease.
decrease. But it's based upon population, enrollment population versus the entire budget. So for us not to plan on something, but again, the point is there may be some movement there.
Yeah.
Or it might not move at all.
Right.
It's
And
kind of
there's, for those that aren't familiar, there's a lot of it is based on a 3-year rolling average, and we're getting closer to the third year being with the new school, like 3 years
Right.
with our new school, which pulled a lot of kids back from the VOTEC.
Which was something
So-
that had been predicted.
Yes.
That because the Chapter 70 school formula, the state aid formula, is to a great extent population-based, to the extent that those students came back to the school, to the Abington school system, away from, where the VOTEC or other schools, that brought more money into the system here, and reduced the amount of money we had to pay to the other outside school entities, particularly the VOTEC. Problem is that you also have to educate more kids now, but overall, it was clearly a in the win column for the town, especially the full day kindergarten program. That, we all took a leap of faith. Was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago,
2
yes.
years ago, I think we invested about $600,000 from a free cash. And the following year, we did indeed receive the benefits of the state aid formula for those additional students in the system. In fact, I think we did quite a bit better because we were also bringing students back from outside districts. So that's worked out well because South Shore VOTEC's again based upon population-based. And as the makeup of that school was less and less Abington students, clearly we pay less. So, like I said, we still have to educate those kids when they come back to the Abington school system. So those are the estimates right now for the school. Right now, as Sue pointed out earlier, we have about $141,000 in debt. That's not excluded debt. That's not debt funded through an enterprise fund, like the sewer enterprise fund. So that's a piece, additional cost in next year's budget. So that's an easy thing to build in because we know that. And the revenue is based upon the final cherry sheet estimates, final numbers. And as local receipts, basically level funded local receipts. So the big things are your fixed cost, health, pension, and that we have some control over. Not a whole lot of wiggle room sometimes. But the key in terms of our projected deficit of $500,000 is what the school budget is going to be. Now, that being said, these budgets that have been submitted from non-school departments, we put them together. We've spoken to department heads. We're going to whittle those down. Okay, that's really the first part of the process. So, that adds up to part of that deficit. So we will be trimming that back based upon what we've seen. And there are some obviously legitimate needs that are somewhat new. So that's where we are. And before Christmas, even though I technically have till January 1, but before Christmas we'll have hopefully a pretty good document to the Finance Committee, which helps you begin your process of meeting with department heads. Anything else on that at the moment?
I have questions, but, well, if you are going on to something else, I can
Nope.
wait till then.
This is
This is it?
the last
This
of our
is
new
it?
business.
Okay.
Then it's just the usual rigmarole
Yep.
at the end.
Where are we at with the snow budget right now?
I don't know because of the storm that we just had with those bills have not come in yet. We hadn't touched it other than buying salt prior to
The
this
bill from
storm.
yesterday hasn't come in yet.
Of course, the snow budget, which is woefully inadequate, after buying materials, there's not a whole lot.
We didn't have,
left
yeah.
to- And one of the things that's peculiar to the snow and ice budget, which is in the DPW budget, is that's the only budget that you can legally overexpend. Other than that, there's no other line item that you can overexpend. When you do that, though, you either have to balance your budget
You
by
have
the
to
end of the
pay
year,
it eventually.
or the following fiscal year, that money's held aside, that over expenditure, let's call it $400,000 for sake of argument. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
A little bit.
So that comes off your revenue for the following year. So you can
Or you
overspend,
raise it on your recap.
but.
400,000 can be low.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we don't have 400,000, not many.
Couple.
If we've deficit spent, so
Two,
I think
three.
the budget right now, our snow and ice budget is
100,000.
100,000. We easily go,
We're probably already
Last year we
over
were over
that.
by 423, I believe.
we've been in
The
the,
winter,
we've been in the 700s.
the record winter of
plus.
2015, what were we, like 1.5 million?
1.2, I think it
So the
was.
obvious
That's a number I
question is, well, why
remember.
have a budget now? Well, we should, but on the other hand, where it's such a wild card, if you know you can overexpend it, at the end of the fiscal year or the beginning, that's next fiscal year, you know exactly what it was you spent, and you can apply some revenue to it, but
And the
ideally,
state-
we should be, go ahead.
And the state has rules about once you've raised what you're spending for snow and ice,
So if you
can't-
go up to
can't go back
250,
down.
you can't go back down to 100,000.
Yeah.
If
So-
you budget for 250,000, you're locked into that now going forward.
Right. So if you only spent 200,000, well, we could have used 50,000 somewhere else, but the reality is for, I would say, a significant portion, I'd probably say a majority of cities and towns under budget their snow and ice budget.
What happens
You know,
to-
because you can.
What happens to that 50 grand in that example you just gave?
It just reverts to free cash. At the end of the fiscal
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
it's closed out. Yeah.
But depending on how tight your budget is, 50,000, I've been here nights until midnight trying to find $50,000 to hang on to a position in a department. So depending on what the economy is like, 50,000 can make a huge difference in, you know,
And not having the ability to go back down is a significant restricting
yeah.
factor.
But in my opinion, 100,000 is awfully low.
Because we know
Just-
that we average, well, let's just say about $450,000, $500,000 a year in expenditure, so, I said, why don't we just budget that? Well, like we said.
It's like we
you
budget-
You can't go down once you get to a certain point, and like Barbara pointed out, if you desperately need funds to keep the trains running,
And
Can't use it.
with the way we've always done it in the past, if you budget the extra 500,000 or 400,000 in this budget, and your budget for the year that we're in comes at 400,000, now you're 800,000 in the hole instead of just 400,000.
yeah, so that one,
So
get
that
that
one
one-time
first
hit.
year, if you did it the
It's a
right
snowball
way-
effect.
Yes, if you did it the right way.
And for example, when you do fill the salt shed, when they buy supplies, so to start off the season, but how much, what's the, so we budget for $100,000 for the snow and ice, and how much does it cost to buy the supplies at the beginning of the
We're
season?
looking at probably between 35 and 40. The tonnage, the weight per ton went from, let's just
The weight per
round,
ton?
what, for the salt.
Those tons are still the top.
Oh, shit. Anyway, we went from like $30 to 62 in the last couple of years. So the cost of it alone has been ridiculous.
And these are all through rather large, consortium bids, so this isn't,
Right.
this is
But you haven't
as good as
even-
it's gonna get.
Haven't even had a storm and hadn't sent a plow out yet, and
Yeah.
you,
And
like, your
And you're
budget's
already,
like cut in
like,
half.
yeah,
And you think you spent that money on a position when
Right.
yeah.
next year you're gonna need it.
If you budgeted, or if you budgeted too much, yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions about
Barbara,
I did.
always.
it? All right.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's good.
The trash, I hate even asking.
It's free now.
Trash is free,
Where are we-
recycling
what are we
costs
doing?
twice what trash used to cost.
We're paying for it, that's what we're doing.
Right. We had a one-year contract.
Actually, we made it a 2-year contract because we were able to lock in the
Recycle.
no,
The tipping
it was
fee?
The tipping fees, because what's happening now is.
The recycles.
tipping fees for Contracts are coming up in municipalities, the tipping fees are going up significantly, so, and again, that's for non-recyclables.
Right.
So just the cost of landfill space, and places to dispose, and I know a lot of rubbish is being, shipped down to, I think, Carolinas now to be incinerated. But there's a cost to that, and that cost, when towns are renewing their contracts now, that cost is going up significantly. So we're in for one more fiscal year, we're in a reasonably stable situation with our disposal rate. So that was something we jumped on. Shall we go on about trash?
Yeah, well, so I'm just thinking of a way to word it without, so they broke the contract, right? Technically?
Republic.
No, they didn't break the contract. Keep in mind, this is the first year of our new contract. This fiscal year and next fiscal year, 21. The contract came due, and basically, the recycling costs are a direct pass-through now rather than a fixed tipping fee, which, as you know, wasn't that long ago. There was no cost to recyclables.
Well, not
So
no
I'm
cost, but
saying
it
there
was
was a
like,
contract that came up, that had matured. And so.
I'm just
so
saying,
it
we weren't
wasn't-
receiving the services that we had contracted for during labor strike. We weren't
Breach
receiving
of
the.
contract, is what you mean, right?
Yeah,
Well, actually, though, the contract has an exemption for several things, including strike,
okay. So,
that's universal, though.
are we over, because the cost of the recyclables has gone up. I know that we had budgeted anticipating that, but I think it went up a little more significantly than we had anticipated.
It's up a little bit, but it's, again.
So we're gonna be in a deficit in that line item, or, I mean, we're,
It's too early to tell. It really is too early to tell, because could fluctuate. And again, it's one of the questions of the day that we
Yeah.
wrestle with too. But it's a very good point that's going to have to be watched, especially as we get more towards the end of the fiscal year. I know this year, last fiscal year was the first year that we saw the major increase in recyclables. And like we had to spend about close, I think it was about $200,000 to balance the budget at the end of FY19. And going into FY20, obviously, we had to increase the budget by a similar amount. So it's gone up tremendously in the last 2 years. And it's not necessarily going to get any better soon.
quick question, so what's the cost right now per ton for recycling?
86,
Okay,
mid to
that's
high
it.
80s.
And what's the
So
cost
what-
for,
So I didn't hear the.
86.
86 to
right,
88.
I'm not exactly
It's
sure.
an
the
estimate.
number.
That's
but
per
it's right.
tonnage.
It's right.
Yes.
Yeah, and trash is in the 60s.
High 60s
Yeah.
last time we talked.
So it's actually more expensive to get rid of recycling.
that's, yeah.
I said.
I know.
This is-
Yeah,
Don't get Greg
We
going.
can figure it out.
Um,
Call decisions.
Right, yeah. But we don't have
I
that
know.
decision, it's not our
Can't do
decision.
it. You gotta do
And
it.
it's, yeah.
File an exemption, right? That's what we gotta do.
Yeah, good luck.
Do like Freetown and buy trash bags that say Freetown on them, put whatever you want in them, they don't check your recyclables.
But, I mean, you don't want to do that to the environment either.
The
I'm
other,
not worried as much about the
think Greg doesn't
environment
care.
as I am about things I don't know. I think
Exceptional
I've been told many times that if you do a pizza box that has pizza in it, and you go to throw it away, guess what? You're contaminated, they can't recycle that pizza box
They
anymore.
have the
So, I mean,
oil
half of the
degrees.
stuff that I do recycle, I'm assuming, now that I think about it, since somebody's told me one particular thing, actually doesn't get in the recycling, so.
Well, and some of it has to do with the
That's
places
what I
that are
mean.
accepting our recycling, and that has to do with China saying that they wouldn't
Purity
take
of the
any,
waste stream.
yep, they wanted pure paper,
Yeah.
and that's all they would take.
Yeah.
So that's why those things change.
I get it.
They previously would take your pizza box with your
Yeah.
leftover grease on it. But they've,
Unless somebody sends me something, how do I know?
right, no, I know,
You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely.
That's the problem.
But again, at this point, it's costing you a whole lot more to
I just rather
get
throw it
rid
in
of
the
your,
trash bag. I don't know, I mean, at some point, it'll break down.
just
So,
bring one real quick, especially for the newer members here. The question comes up all the time, well, why don't we find someone else to pick up the trash when we go to bid? Well, one of the dynamics here is that trash collection is a municipal service that is, the town is required to pay prevailing wages. So wages are set by the state. So whatever contract you have in here has to pay their people the exact same thing. They could pay them more, but they have to pay them at least X amount. And tipping fees, we're doing better right now for regular trash than others whose contracts have come up in the last couple of years. But tipping fees are going to be reasonably similar for any true curbside community. So when you take the two major factors that go into it, there isn't a lot of wiggle room to go out and get Joe's pickup service. In essence, really, the bigger companies have the economies of scale for those, those other things that aren't significant. So it's not an easy thing to go out and try to save money through it. Now, one of the things that no, we haven't talked about, I've thought of it, was we've had 2 overrides in this town going back several years, I think totaling about 1.1 million for trash collection. Before my time, so at least 7 years ago was the last override.
I think further back, because I don't think I was
Well,
living
there
here
were
at
2,
the
yeah, there were
time.
one previous to that, in total 1.1 million. Now, our trash collection budget now exceeds that. So the amount of the overrides now isn't sufficient to pay for the trash collection. And what a lot of communities do is they fund their trash collection through a trash collection fee, like you would an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you want to keep your costs as low as possible, but your budget isn't impacted. We have to, go, increase our budget next year by $200,000 for trash collection. It's not affecting any other part of the budget, but obviously the residents have to pay additionals. So it's been suggested by me that, and this is a little pie in the sky, but to the extent that the town were to vote an underride to bring that money back down to what it was prior and went to a trash collection fee, you wouldn't have to wear it from a budgetary standpoint.
You would have to definitely first vote an underride, because you couldn't ask people, there's people in this town that voted for an override to
Yeah.
keep the trash in their taxes, and then ask those people that paid to, voted to have their taxes increased, to now then say, okay, well, so you voted for the taxes to be increased, but now we're gonna also charge you a trash fee. So you'd have to do an underride. Yeah, they do it, I think, in Rockland. They have like
I
a
think it would
quarterly
probably be
trash,
similar
like
to
your
your
water or your sewer or,
But again,
Brockton puts out
that's
a lot of
a
that.
big time
Or-
policy
yeah.
decision for
Yeah.
selectmen and all of you. That's
we've gone around about it, or this board has
What about
discussed
the
it.
towns that don't have trash collection, it's private, so you have to do that? Or you bring it to the dump, they have a dump.
right.
Can we do that?
If that's what the town.
No, I'm saying, like, I don't even know, I've never.
No,
been
the
to
town
dump.
voted
Is our
Well, I
dump
live in
able to
Bridgewater, and
handle
that's
it?
what happens. You have to hire your own private line
Correct.
when you take it to
Yep.
the transfer station. We don't call it a dump, okay? The transfer station.
And the town voted against a transfer
Turn on
station
transfer
and
station.
repealed an entire Board of Health, I think. Was it the entire Board of Health? Was it the entire Board of Health? Yeah. It was there was a strong feeling against having a transfer station in town. So I don't know that has changed.
Well, that was a matter of a commercial, I believe. That
Yes.
wasn't your local residents. We're talking about a regional transfer station.
We previously had called it the dump. It's now, we've paid to cap it, we've paid to have studies done on it.
Paying to monitor.
We're paying to monitor it.
every year.
I think
Or
it would be a
every 2
hard
years.
sell to find anyone that would want to
Yeah.
And
have that
the
down
other thing
again.
too is, you've got to make an assessment as to, the community. Is this, if, and a lot of towns have to do this, would people hire a private contractor? Would you be finding places to put your stuff that isn't would you be putting it in your neighbor's rubbish? Would you be dumping it in the woods? I mean,
Or at the North
No, but
School,
like, I-
like clothing
I
bin.
had to make that decision, and I mean,
yeah.
I have another big thing, and I have to make that decision now.
But your neighbors might choose a company that's not super reliable.
Or
And
they may
then,
not choose a company at all.
but then, theirs is
right.
piling up and it's making your neighborhood look,
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you're like,
So,
You don't want to
a
give
lot of
people a choice.
variables. Well, I mean,
so
people don't always
Yeah,
know.
no, I know, I hear you.
Chairman's trying to-
what else do you have on the list, Barbara?
That was
I think
it.
we've-
Trash and snow
I
budget were
think
my.
we've gone over that one,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so
Well,
beyond the budget, we haven't done this before, but we are going to provide you with what we've spoken to the department heads about wanting for their capital items before they come to you. There's some that are prices to be determined. We do have some prices on here, just so that it can be part of a discussion between you guys before they come in front of you. And also, we're thinking about a possibility of creating another revolving account for public records requests. Department heads are putting out money to provide things for people looking for public records requests. They get paid back, but that money goes into the general fund, but it's coming out of their budget, so it's kind of affecting their operating cost.
So such as public,
Like for the building department's a big one, planning, so if somebody comes in and they want a set of plans for a development that's going through, and it's, it's a 10-page plan, we have to provide that for them, we provide the time. We charge them the money for it, they sometimes put it on a flash drive, so we're paying $10 for a flash drive, we charge them, the money goes back in the general fund. So we were thinking if we have one revolving fund for all public records requests controlled by the town manager's office or the accountant's office or whoever, so that the money that goes in is also getting, using to pay for the products, the supplies that they need.
so it's not being taken out of departments'
Correct.
budgets.
Especially
Makes
small
sense.
departments that.
Like planning
Right.
has nothing, but she's constantly being asked
Right.
for,
Yep.
documentation that.
And she doesn't have the money to spend to,
Right.
Exactly. So
makes sense.
it's,
Yep.
it's, for the small departments, it'd be very helpful. And
Say-
that wasn't my idea. I think,
Start that with
I
Greg.
think,
Spoken about capital items
I think
that.
Sue and Leanne decided that would be a good approach. And these are just, this year, what people had submitted during the budgets. I know sometimes people come in here and you haven't necessarily heard of or not aware of those just yet, so. I don't know if you want to.
So the security system is on here if, in fact, that we can make it to the new fiscal year, but if not,
And this isn't a good number.
the security system is to be determined,
Right.
but not the fire suppression system.
Said that's not a good number.
There's no.
It's in fact three letters.
In fact, there's no number, exactly.
So we had our fire alarm system tested here at Town Hall, and the system is antiquated. They cannot no longer purchase parts for it, and just the panel itself can't be changed. All of the fire extinguishers, the control
Everything.
panels, the smoke detectors, everything would need to be replaced.
When was the building made?
It opened in
2021,
1998.
20,
It opened in
22
1996.
1997.
Yeah.
6 or 7, yeah.
So the library was at the same time, so I talked to the library director today. She's going to also have her system looked at. We have the same exact system, so she's probably running into the same thing. The cost that we have here was an estimate that was given to us from our
The current-
monitoring company. We have the lieutenant from the fire department has been in today with 2, and he will be in with another person to do actual procurement quotes for it to make sure that we fall in line with.
We also want to assess what we need versus what a vendor is telling us we
Right.
need. And we don't have the expertise for that, so again, the fire departments,
And the library director is also working with the fire department as of today to make sure that their system is also, that it needs to be provided for. Go back to trash and recycling.
Thought we were done with that.
Cart-
Right.
Carts is in
Cars
every
and-
year.
Yeah, it's just basically getting hit by cars or, damaged by, on the roads and wear out, so.
Do some damage to your car before they do some
Yeah.
damage,
Right.
They're
right?
pretty hefty,
Yeah.
sturdy
So
carts.
those have to be
so,
replaced on a rotating basis.
Yep.
I'm sure you've noticed the town hall windows, when you open them, they don't always close. So this might be just a matter of getting them repaired, not replaced. So that's something we're looking into, having somebody look at. The police department's looking for 2 motorcycles, 2 cruisers, and the siding on their police.
Yeah.
You could explain the siding.
Well, I think we were all somewhat aware of it. Last year, actually it was about a year and a half ago, that some of the siding on the police station started falling off. Building commissioner went out and took a look and determined that the siding that was used, basically it was the wrong siding, it was the wrong, I'm not sure,
Thickness.
installation.
Yes.
And the problem was that it was 10 years old. And the warranties it's almost like the timer went off. Okay, the siding fell off just when there was no warranty left by the
Funny
contractor.
how that always happens.
Yeah, and we did, I had a conversation with town council and looked through the warranty paperwork, and we considering, okay, is there somebody on the hook for this that we could legitimately, the reality is no, after 10 years, we don't have any recourse, we just have to replace the siding. The problem is you can, replace the siding that's falling off. Unfortunately, the problem affects the entire building. It's just a matter of time. Once it starts coming off, it comes off more rapidly. So it needs to be dealt with. We don't have an actual
Cost.
price yet, but the police chief is working on getting some estimates.
I know we have no recourse, but did we ask the people who did install it?
I'm sorry?
I know we have no recourse, like we can't sue them, we can't make them do anything, but did we ask them? We say, hey, we got stuff falling off the building and you guys used the wrong thing. Did anybody ever have that conversation with them?
I didn't, but I don't know if the chief and
I would love to have that conversation with them.
we'll find the number. I'm completely serious, but
I tell you all the
Yeah.
time, Rick, give me the phone number for any of these things and I'd love to do it. So, yeah, I mean, I think that if somebody confirmed that it was wrong or not the right stuff that they did, we paid them for that. I understand the limitations have left, but
right. I mean, there was a number of people along the way. Obviously, the contractor who did not build, construct to the specification.
right.
And you had an owner's project manager and an architect overseeing the project who didn't pick up on
Right.
that, which is what he or she is specifically paid to do, is to make sure that the contractor
Correct.
does the job to the spec. There was
It might be a few phone calls, is what he's saying.
couple people
Yeah.
who theoretically are in the line of responsibility, but we're not in a position to make somebody do something. And keep in mind, it's hard to believe that a contractor is going to come back and spend well over $100,000 in their own goods and services to re-site a police station. We're talking about good money here. I don't even know if the contractor's still in business. I don't know that.
But
In any
I'm
event, that's-
more than happy.
Very good. We shall get you a phone number.
I have a question about the motorcycles.
Good for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can only be used half the year, right, in general. And what can they do that a cruiser can't? You know what I mean? And maybe you're not the right person to ask this, it's more for the police chief, but
Definitely a good question, but, I mean,
Yeah.
like, definitely a
Yeah.
good question for the,
Very good.
So
and they will
questions-
come in.
okay.
For when the
And-
police chief comes in,
Okay.
how many motorcycles do they have now?
Right,
What's the normal
Right, are these replacing-
replacement cycle and replacement rate? Would it be more efficient to have different vehicles other than the motorcycle? So
Okay.
definitely the right questions.
And with the cruisers, that's two cruisers. The department's been on a rotation over several years. It's, two cruisers. And
Was it 3 last year?
It was 3 last year.
Yeah,
Current
that's
fiscal
what-
year is 3.
By
yes.
last, I mean,
And again, the chief can speak
a
to
year
that,
ago
too,
right now
why
when
that
we were
particular
discussing this.
Turnover.
So then the DPW is looking for a waste oil furnace. Again, needs an engineering study on Hunts Pond Dam, and Central Street Bridge needs to be repaired. between those two last ones, there may be some grant monies available.
And the Central Street Bridge, you mean the bridge that the train uses?
We
That
were trying
bridge?
to figure out exactly what bridge that was today. It was not
Yeah, I was-
specific in his documentation.
Yeah.
that he gave to us.
Looking at this, I'm like, what bridge is that?
The Central Street
Or
Bridge,
is it center? And I.
Oh, maybe it wasn't- maybe it was a typo.
Yes.
because there is the Center Street Bridge, which would be the water, like the,
By the dam?
That's the one that needs to be redone.
by,
Okay.
So the walking bridge?
no, that's at Island Grove, I think that you're thinking of. I'm talking about over by
Different-
Spencer.
that's a
Pizza.
different
The
thing.
one that I know.
That's being analyzed.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
again,
different
that would be
thing.
a question to ask John Stone.
Yeah.
Is that even a bridge over by Spencer's Pizza? Would you consider that a bridge?
Yeah, actually,
Because that's where the
I mean, the
dam is,
water
right?
goes,
The
yeah,
dam
yeah, and it
goes
drops,
over the
in,
dam and
but
it's under the bridge.
And
what's on the other side, I guess, okay.
the EPA has been, this is one of the requirements. The town has been a little remiss in not dealing with this earlier, the Hunts Pond Dam. It is, like I said, it's EPA regulated dams, and so been a little bit on the back burner for too long, and now they're starting to get a little bit antsy about it. So, and as Sue pointed out, particularly with the bridge, there was a bridge program. I've looked around, and dams, unless they're more coastal, it's hard to find money for those specifically. But again, this is just the engineering, the Hunts Pond Dam. So we'll hire the town. DPW uses a particular company that does most of their work, and they will analyze it, put together a spec, and they will also seek grant funds, recommend grant programs that may be available.
And if I recall properly, the superintendent did say something about the bridge may not be fundable by grant money because it's larger than the small bridge grants that are out there. So that's another question.
Falls in between.
Yeah, kind of, it might not fall within the grant capacities. And then at the MS4 permitting that we need to keep doing for federal and state mandates. Park and Rec requesting a front end of loader, a paint machine, and a pickup truck. And then sewer for phase 1 manholes and forest main inspections. And the golf briefly spoke with us about possibly upgrading their HVAC system. Currently, they have air conditionings in the windows, which is not really efficient to the operation and the cost of the enterprise fund.
And just to remind people, Park and Rec is a division of the DPW. So they're one and the same, but it's easier just
Yep,
to see
to
what
separate
function
that.
that.
Yep.
Not that they don't use the equipment for everything, but just so there's no mistake about that.
And the sewer ones typically come out of the sewer enterprise,
Correct.
And so would golf.
so would not be free cash.
So you have a lot of questions to ask department heads when they come in, but at least you got a little bit of a preview.
Greg, do some Park and Rec
Research.
Googling.
Doing it. He's already
Oh,
doing it.
no, I'll get that.
He's already got that loader? That's right.
How much does a bridge cost?
Listen, there's one word on this thing that I'm not comfortable with.
Just
You guys-
one?
You guys will find it.
The word that's so long.
TBD?
No, that's neither of those. But Justin just brought up a good point. That's a lot of money for, I guess, just knowing a little bit more of what people are going to do with pieces of equipment helps a little bit more.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like a front end loader, that's a big deal. Like that's not your average hand. Like a
It's
front
not
end loader is
like a use it every day kind of.
no, yeah, that's a, so, those are the things where, I guess maybe if we could use it and somebody could show that it could somewhat save time, money, whatever. But that's a big one.
Well, and also what it's replacing potentially.
Sure,
Sure.
all those things,
Right.
because I know I keep saying it, but there's a guy literally at the end of the street that rents these things. And I don't know him, I barely know him, Shaughnessy. He's a good guy, he's an Abington guy, and these are things that we, instead of doing big numbers like that, especially if we don't use the equipment that much, it's a much better way. And he might not have a front end loader, so that might be the answer. Because front end loaders are pretty big, but I'm saying they don't normally keep them on their
Well, yeah,
premises.
if you have an incident where you have to move some earth to an emergency, you don't have to go rent it.
Yeah,
I'm
why?
just saying, so that's a
But
question.
why? It's at the end of the street.
Maybe it's already rented to somebody. I'm just saying, I don't have the answers to all your questions, but I'm just.
Questions to ask.
Yeah, no, that's.
Expenses variable
Yeah.
if you
Stone
can.
when he's in. Yep, but this is, we very much appreciate getting this
Yes.
now at this
This
point.
looks awesome.
This is what we were asking
Well, I
for,
was-
so we
I
can
was-
get involved in this process early on.
I was
So,
hesitant, but Sue.
Appreciate it.
said would actually
very
be-
much appreciated,
Thank you very much.
We do appreciate it.
yes.
Still sounds right. Anyway.
Anything else for us?
No, that's it.
All right.
All right.
Anyone else have questions?
I do. So when we're replacing old vehicles, what happens to the old vehicles that get replaced?
Depends.
A cruiser.
Well,
It could be-
those are usually reappropriated to some other department, for instance, the building department that uses a vehicle, or, this isn't the case right now, but we have a vehicle for the assessor, because, she's out on the road a lot doing inspections, and, maybe the health agent, although right now he doesn't use a town vehicle, but when you have inspections, you want people to see that you're actually a town agency. So generally, they are reappropriated to other town uses and replacing some vehicles that.
They slap some fresh paint
dispose
on
of.
it, and
Yeah,
and it
dispose
becomes
of.
the, but then also, they sometimes will use, say they have a cruiser that's their backup, but it's like,
Yeah.
now their backup is not so great of a backup anymore. They'll take, all right, now we have these two, we're gonna take them out of regular commission, but we can use them for,
Yep.
And vehicles, let's just say for the sake of argument, you've got the replacement chain. Vehicles that have no value to the town, those are put out to bid through state listing. So it's easy to do. Now, we don't have to put together a bid spec to get rid of a vehicle that's 10 years old with 180,000 miles on it. But somebody may want it. If not, it's officially junk,
Yeah.
if that's the case.
Okay.
Other questions?
And I would also offer, that especially for the new members, if you ever want to come in someday, afternoon or evening, and just sit down and get a little more familiar with overall municipal finance, just let us know. We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. All right. The remainder of our agenda should be pretty quick. Starts with liaison reports. We have our new liaisons assigned. Does anyone have any reports from their departments or committees? Russ, anything?
No, sir.
Should we be reaching out to them proactively?
Reach out, introduce yourself.
Okay.
any more meetings of the Town Manager Search Committee? Sorry,
Not-
I gotta,
not
I gotta
awkward- Not
ask.
awkward at all.
We were supposed to have one Monday night, and we had multiple illnesses and
Snow.
fun weather.
So, yeah.
So it'll be, the next one is on the 16th. So, but the listing was posted in the Beacon and MMA.org, and I believe MMMA.org.
There's only one, MMA.
MMA.
Oh, is it really? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Martial
Okay.
arts.
Was it, sorry, but, was the salary determined? Did the selectmen give you a
No.
I
salary range?
don't believe so, so
That wasn't
in our discussions, we just went by what was in the FY20 budget, and, yeah.
There's actually nothing posted at all for a salary. I believe, talking to the chairman, I think that was an intentional decision.
Okay,
So that's our guideline, it's just what's in the budget.
all right.
That's it, we've had,
And what's your deadline in your posting?
deadline is December 31st. I believe we've had one applicant so far. So,
Okay.
That's not me.
I don't remember. And I apologize, I don't have his name, but maybe it's not, I probably shouldn't even be
Yeah,
disclosing it.
yeah, no,
But
yeah.
yeah, so that's the only applicant
Not
I've had,
relevant.
we've had so far. We've had some other inquiries, but only one applicant.
It's like the whistleblower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I won't give Greg's name away as the first applicant.
Yeah.
right, thank you very much.
Any other liaison reports? Correspondence, we had none this month, so no, I know you're all
I'll take it.
very upset to not get a copy of the Beacon this month, but we don't have one to give out. We do have minutes to go over. We have minutes from the November 6th meeting. Barbara was not
Was
here.
not
and
here.
Thus cannot make any motions or vote on them.
I can walk
Motion
you
to
guys
approve the minutes for November 6th
Is
as,
a motion to approve the extremely well put together minutes for the very short meeting on November 6th. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion and a second, and Greg almost seconded it. Is there any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of approving the minutes from November 6th? All those opposed, abstaining? Abstaining?
Oh,
They are approved. Our next meeting will be on January 8th, technically the second Wednesday of January, the first non-holiday Wednesday of January of the year 2020. It's crazy.
Will we start meeting weekly?
We'll
after
start
that?
meeting weekly probably towards the end of January, the beginning of February.
All right, thank you.
So,
because when do our department head meetings start? What is the date for that? Those?
we do not have the official date yet. Typically, we have been starting end of January, beginning of February with those going.
Want me to schedule those for you?
If you could, that would be fantastic.
Can we please-
Last year's schedule is probably gonna be pretty similar to what.
Yeah,
Except that the school on one night
By itself.
by itself.
yes. Which we originally have scheduled
I
each of
know,
the
I know.
years,
It's just
and
even,
we end up,
even small
People
departments,
having to move
especially where
around.
we've got, like, new people that should have time, be able to have time to ask questions and really understand everything that they're gonna be making decisions on. The school is a huge,
Where the school
it's
is
like
such
a
large-
totally
Yeah, would
other
you-
town.
Yeah.
Would
It's
you guys consider a Saturday morning?
We used to do that. I don't know how this board feels. I
Yeah.
am fine with
I
that, but
personally like
some-
But I know that a lot of people can't, just can't.
I mean, it was just,
make
it's
that
not for
time.
all departments,
What
but
time?
just for the school. Saturday morning, 8 o'clock in the morning.
we used to do, because it can be like a,
You want to see me at 8?
I don't wanna say it.
is there a big difference? Is there a big difference between 8 and 9?
yes.
Yes.
That's an
We could
hour-
split the difference and call it 8:30.
An hour of
This is
sleep
not
is
a
the
time
difference.
proposal, this is just an example.
Right.
of something you might want to consider.
Saturday's good.
Yeah, Saturday morning.
I mean, this is something that they used to do, and we'd have coffee and,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
yeah, I could definitely do Saturday mornings.
Saturday, and,
Yep.
As long as I'm in town, yeah.
Them having enough money to buy coffee and donuts.
yeah, no, I think it was the school committee that, it was a member of the school committee that used to kind of organize that. Which, I mean, we could get our own coffee, but,
As long as we're not buying for the audience, we can
Right,
pitch in.
right,
so-
yeah.
3 people.
I think it's beneficial, if you haven't done it before, to have a long meeting like that. They
And-
can go into like stuff that is just so complex, the special education.
To start that at 7 at night.
That's what- it's a long,
It makes it hard.
after 2 hours, you're like,
And
You get a little
Sue, I'll go
break,
back and
it's,
forth
you know.
with you on the schedule, because one of the things I would like to do this year is have maybe a week or two kind of baked in for the departments that have to cancel, or the nights that we get snowed out, or
Yes,
things
absolutely.
of that nature, because I think last year, we ended up having some departments have to push out, and then we ended up with more on the same night than really were.
Too much.
It was too much, and it made it hard for the committee and for the department heads. So,
I think like a large department with a department like mine, you know, and rather
Yeah.
than police and fire one night. or-
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's
we've,
really
we've, we've made sure to separate out police,
the big
fire,
departments, the
DPW,
larger
schools. But
departments.
trying to make sure that we get them to their own nights, and that we're giving each department their due when we go through this process, so. Does anyone have any other questions, comments, motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
A motion to adjourn in a second. Is there any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning? It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you next year.
Oh, right, yeah.